Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria with RedmondMag.com, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us. The topic of today's webcast is getting the most out of your Microsoft security investment with MDR, sponsored by Critical Start. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping details. We will have a Q&A session at the end of today's event, so please type any questions you have in the Q&A box. Critical Start has also provided some resources which do correspond with today's event, so please take a moment to check those out. They're located to the right of your audience console. Today's webcast is also being recorded, so please keep an eye out for a link in your email to rewatch the presentation or to share it with a colleague. And now I'd like to introduce to you our speakers. Today we have the pleasure of hearing from Jerry Carlson, Microsoft Alliance Manager at Critical Start, and Greg Schultz, Senior Analyst and Microsoft MVP at Server Storage IO. So we're in for a great event, and with that, I'll pass the time over to Jerry and Greg to get us started.
Great, thanks, Victoria, and hello, everybody. Welcome to today's discussion about getting the most out of your Microsoft investment with MDR. And as mentioned, I'm joined today by Jerry Carlson. Hey, Jerry, how are you?
Hey, Greg, how you doing? Hey, everybody on the phone. Glad to be here and excited about this conversation.
Outstanding. Why don't we just jump right into it, Jerry? Let's just get right down to this conversation, this discussion today. And I love this sub-bullet here that you have, which is simplifying cybersecurity, critical start managed detection and response services. So, Jerry, tell us about Critical Start and MDR for those who may not know who you are and what this is all really addressing.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks. So as Greg said, Critical Start is a managed detection and response company. We manage and detect your infrastructure 24/7. I also wanted to share that, if you looked at my bio, I worked at Microsoft for a very long time, so I kind of have an affinity for Microsoft and the security. But, as a partner, I want to just sort of say, we have a good partnership with Microsoft. So we're MISA members, which is their intelligence security. We're security design partners. We're on their partner advisory board and a gold partner. All of this is not really meant to be a commercial. All I'm saying is that if you own Microsoft technology, then I would be asking partners that came to talk to you if they had a good relationship with Microsoft. And so this is just a slide to show you that we do have a good relationship, and we're really deeply integrated with Microsoft and their security stack as well. But I wanted to just take a minute and say, as a security professional, like most of you are on the phone, I'm guessing, as we set out to create a security architecture and infrastructure, this is a security car that we're building. I lived in Detroit for many years, so I love the car analogy, but this car that I think we're building, in reality, we end up building a car like this. And, we don't set out to build a car like that, but we do. And even worse than that is that we end up thinking it's working. And so, I think we're all very sharp and we try our best, but again, we just fall into this. And really the reason why I think that this happens a lot of the time is that we have been in this model for many years, maybe 25-ish years. It's the best of breed model. But this model is broken today. It served us well in the past, and I think it was a good thing. You found the best tool for the job, whether that was the best email security or endpoint or identity access management. I think the problem today, it being broken, is that it's complex and it's expensive to integrate. Companies on the phone here, you're selling things or selling services or making things. I don't know if you're in the business of integrating these disparate tools. And so it becomes expensive and complex. Training on these tools is constant. You get people and you get new tools, you constantly are training. The tools are good. There's too many alerts to handle. Those tools are finding these alerts. And then there's gaps in visibility if you just don't have the time to integrate them. And so those are the kind of the four major things that I see why this best of breed model is broken. Now, I get it if you said we still believe in it or we're still doing it somewhat, and that's fine. I'm just saying that you're going to have to contend with these four things and accept the risk of doing some of those things as well.
So, Jerry, is it a matter that, certainly there's more threats, there's more incidents, there's more things that are happening. The software is getting better. Is this a matter of throwing more people, throwing more money, throwing more technology, or is it also a part about leveraging it, starting to utilizing it, and configuring it, and a combination of getting the software, getting the technology to also start working more smartly based on what you're telling it to do?
Yeah, I think there's all those aspects play into it, Greg, but I think one of the key things I see all the time, and we're talking in context of Microsoft Security Stack right here, but it happens with other vendors, is I think it's, if you remember, there's a commercial a while back of George Foreman. He had this grill, and he put a chicken in there, I think, and he said, set it and forget it. That was just what I remember in my head. It doesn't work in this case, but I've seen this thing happen over and over, is that companies will install technology and they'll basically forget it. They'll just put it in and they never care and feed it. And I mean, like, I don't know how many new detection models come out monthly by Microsoft, and even weekly sometimes, but I'm just saying that model and thinking of just set and forget it doesn't work. So one of the fundamental problems is that people could have technology, and it's not sitting on the shelf. It's not shelfware. It's actually implemented, but they don't care and feed for it at a rhythm that they should. So an operational excellence is missing. And again, it's because we're very busy and have a shortage of people that leads to that. But I think that would be a major thing that I see a lot with the technology. Is it not cared for?
Well, if we could dwell on that just for a moment, Jerry, is that, and you mentioned things that people, they're applying updates, they're applying new things that are being pushed out by Microsoft, but there's more to it than just checking the box and saying, oh yeah, well, we applied all the updates. There's also that going in there and checking, and are you getting false alerts or false positives, and are you really filtering, and are you actually presenting more alerts to your admins, to your analysts, to your SOC that are being detected because the software maybe is so good?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to lead us to the next kind of conversation that we're going here. This slide I'm showing you is not complete. It's probably way more than this, but I believe the last number was between 50 and 70 security controls per company on average. And so this slide is just meant to be busy. And if you just thought in your mind, how many controls do you have at your company? And in addition to those controls, you have to think about which one of them are implemented correctly, which one of them are legacy and not working really well, or which one of them do you just leave on the shelf and not using. And so there's this idea that, yeah, there are a lot of tools and there's a lot of integration of those, but what they lead to, Greg, is what you were hitting on. I think this is really the point of a lot of the conversation today, is that the people that we're asking to look at these alerts and to investigate and to remediate them are just overloaded. They're just fatigued. There are so many alerts, and partially that is because we have very good tools these days. I mean, they are finding much more than we could ever think about even a few years ago. And so we have this fundamental problem of it's alert fatigue or alert overload, whichever way you want to look at it. But this is definitely a problem happening right now.
And Jerry, I want to stick on this one, but tie back to that complex slide there that we were just looking at, is that there is this fatigue because there is more coming out. The software is spitting it. And you mentioned that word integration or integrated, that maybe they have a common GUI or a common interface, but that information that's flowing in the background isn't necessarily flowing from one tool to another. You're getting these alerts. Could you touch on that real quickly?
Yeah, sure. Microsoft architecture is integrated by design. What I mean by that is that if a threat signal came into Office email, as an example, and the endpoint could know about it because they share that signal, or vice versa, or it could be an identity that both Office and the endpoint share. So the point about that is that if the tools are designed to share that threat intel, you as a customer should not have to make those integrations and shared signal. And so best of platform would be another term we could use, but that would be ideal where the tools themselves share signal and you don't have to stitch them together to do that.
So as a part of that, then again, just building out on this, getting the most out of your Microsoft investment for MDR and this best of breed and this overload in the integration and the set it, forget it. Part of that also is don't forget to check your dashboard. Don't forget to check, are you getting the right information? Is it being resolved? Are there metrics that matter, Jerry?
Yeah, we at Critical Start, we measure MTTD, mean time to detection, and mean time to resolution, MTTR. And we have a contractually based SLA that basically tells us that we do that within an hour. We're very transparent about it. We'll show you in real time in your portal how we're doing against what we said we were going to do. So that's one way that we physically show it. The time required to investigate alerts, this slide that you're seeing now, I don't know, you could pick whatever company size you are. I'm going to use 5,000 for an example, a big one, I guess, plus. And so a time for an analyst, a SOC analyst, to look at an actionable alert or a false positive is roughly 30 minutes. And so what you're asking is you're saying, okay, we have all these tools, and let's just say they're integrated, that you've done the work or it's integrated by design. We are generating a tremendous amount of alerts that we're asking these analysts, with machine learning, with AI, with human people, we're asking them still to go through all these alerts. And so this is just kind of showing you the bigger problem of that. Well, I think the next one is really interesting as well. So the people is the problem, but the next one for me is that if you look at this slide, it all comes down to risk and money in this particular case. So if you just consider my fictitious scenario here, this is a customer of 2,000 endpoints. They will receive an average of 10 million alerts. And again, detection tools are good, even outside of Microsoft, even in competitors of Microsoft, they're good. But the thing about it is that you get 10 million in that 30-minute kind of an average that we talked about. A salary of a SOC analyst is about 85K. Why I'm kind of harping on this is because I'm saying that if you're a good company, you will deal with this, too many alerts, by saying, well, we just can't look at everything. We don't have enough people to look at everything. And so you'll decide that maybe critical is what we can handle, and the high, medium, and low, we just accept the risk that we can't look at those and that nothing will happen in those. And if you're best of the best companies, you may look at critical and high. But the whole point is that even spending that numbers, if you do the math, 30 minutes, 85K, 10 million alerts, it's still 1.75 million, and you're still at risk because you're saying that these medium and low you don't look at. And so I like to look at the numbers of them, and if you can't address them all these alerts, how do you address them by ignoring some of them?
So then part of the objective would be is like if you had another chart or a curve where you see on one axis the number of incidents, the number of alerts is just going up logarithmically. But if you enable what we're about to go into and dig deeper, we see another curve that's going down about like that, which is the mean time to response is going down while the number of incidents and alerts is going up.
Correct. That is correct.
How do we do that? How do we do that? How do we get there?
Well, part of the problem, again, is not just the tools, it's the people. And anybody that's trying to hire a SOC analyst or to create a SOC and start one up will know that's true. But if you look at this number of 4 million person shortage, I don't think that's getting any better. I did see some of the community colleges across the country are starting to, add cybersecurity SOC analyst training, which is fantastic. I think it's amazing. But part of the problem is that we just can't find enough people. And so what we're trying to talk about with our customers is that you could have a 2-person SOC, a well-formed 30-person SOC. You still need help in both of those cases because a 30-person well-formed SOC is usually a larger company. And we used our example of 2,000 people get 10 million alerts. Well, if you come into a 100,000 person company, how many alerts are there? It's a lot more than that. And so the idea is that our goal is to augment a SOC that you already have. And so if you wanted to build your own SOC, I hear this. I said, well, Jerry, can I just build my own SOC? And I think you can. You need 12 people at a minimum to have 24/7 coverage. And so if you were able to hire, I'd say pretty entry-level SOC analysts at $85,000 a year, you need 12 of them, and that's the base minimum just for 24/7 support. You still need architectural, plumbing, escalation, hunting. Those you add on, now the 5,000 person company, you're just shy of $4 million a year. So my point of all that is that you can create your own SOC. It's costly and it's hard to find the people. What we're trying to help you with is say, we're going to make your 2-person SOC look like a 12-person or 20-person SOC. Because our SOC, what we do is we resolve every single alert, everyone, whether you're a 100,000 person company or you're a 2,000 person company. And this is a little bit about our SOC. And so I like the 99% is a good stat for us. Again, I told you that they're hard to find SOC analysts. And what's happening in the industry is that if you hire a SOC analyst and they stay with you for a period of time and they were junior, they get a little bit of experience and quickly they're offered an extra 20 grand, 50, whatever, to go to the next company, and they're jumping. I mean, they're moving around as fast as we can sway them away from those other companies. Well, at our company, we have a 99% retention rate. I think partially that is because if you have an overload of alerts and you can't get to them, I think it's kind of demoralizing myself if I couldn't get my job done. So if I come into work and I have hundreds of alerts to go through and investigate, I got 30 minutes to do it, and I only get to 20 of them, well, my workload next day becomes even more. And so the idea for us is that our human SOC analysts stay around because with our technology and our IP, we actually get through every single alert, regardless if it's high, critical, medium, low, or informational. They all look the same to us. And so we allow them to get their job done in time. We have a vigorous training. So when they come on board, they get 320 hours of really in-depth training. It's not some off-the-shelf training. It's by our own analysts. And then they get 48 hours continually. So, you know, we're SOC 2 compliant, PCI, and then I mentioned those contractual SLAs. But this is just a slide that says anybody that you partner with, the SOC is going to be where the rubber hits the road. You know, all the sales, all the demos, when you get down to it, you just want to not have breaches. And this is one of those metrics that mean that.
So let's use this as the transition then, which we've set up the conversation. We've touched on where the issues are, the pain points, and where we want to get to. We're on a journey. How do we get from that being overloaded on that upper left to where we want to go, kicking back, and we've got all the information coming in, we've got our metrics, and how do we get there? How do we get there? Walk us through that, Jerry.
All right. I must have had this conversation 1,000 times with CISOs and everybody else in the company. But as you said, Greg, it's a journey. I'm just using this graphic as an example. But on the left, we already said that this best of breed silo security leads to gaps in coverage. And on the right this is specifically a Microsoft Utopia slide. And although you say, well, okay, those are nice slides, but the devil's in the details on getting across that bridge. And that is absolutely true. But I'm not saying that you shouldn't start the journey or at least have a plan to sort of consolidate some of these tools, rationalize some of these tools. And I'm talking about the Microsoft suite that you bought that half of them are still sitting on the shelf. And so this slide is sort of talking about the first thing you need to do is to look at these tools that you have today and determine, you know, are they working? Are they effective? Or are they on the shelf? And then the next slide here, This is unique to an MDR. So this title says how to use your Microsoft spend and utilize MDR to make it more valuable. Well, again, we said you're getting a lot of alerts. We just said that. You guys may agree or not. But in this case, you know, we have been around a little while, and anything on the left-hand side, we're experts in these technologies. And why is that unique? Because if you're trying to start off on a journey where you're going from this best of breed, messed up, mixed up world, we can help you along that journey because we can simultaneously monitor your security 24/7 in any kind of a mixed scenario from the left-hand side as you journey to the right-hand side.
So, Jerry, is this just about leveraging your SOC for monitoring, or is it also about leveraging your SOC, the critical start, your expertise to also help that customer, help that client, make sure their environment is configured and that it is set correctly and that they are getting that value back out of it?
That's a great question, Greg. Thanks. Anybody can call themselves an MDR and they could say, I'm going to monitor your security. And that's not trivial. That's hard work for sure. But we don't just monitor your security. We basically, as you get onboarded into our service, we spend a tremendous amount of time with you in the beginning and along the journey on customizing the service for your context. Now, the key is in the devil of the context because, out of the box detections are good, but they lack the context. What's unique about your company? Do you do a lot of coding? Do you run PowerShell scripts on Mondays but not Tuesdays? Does your CEO really travel to the Bahamas every Thursday? Is that impossible travel, as Microsoft will tell you, and it's good. Microsoft will say impossible travel. Well, there's not a lot of context around that. And so we tailor the service per company. And so we spend a lot of time doing that. And we don't meet our SLA by sending you an email saying, we found a critical alert, do something about it. We basically work on rules of engagement we set up in the beginning. So you could say, you can isolate as a remediation step any desktop or laptop, but do not isolate our servers. Or don't isolate the servers on the weekend, or don't isolate the CEO's laptop, any variation of that. So we spend a lot of time to tailor our service to the context of your business. And that's the difference in making a good service.
So to build on that, Jerry, I mean, some organizations are focused around their QBRs or quarterly business reviews. Mm-hmm. Is there something similar to that Critical Start that you're involved with from a similar context, which is a quarterly security review or a quarterly alert review or whatever you would refer to it as?
Yeah, we do. When you sign up for our service, you get a human. You get a customer success person. That person is tied to you. And so one of the things they do is what Greg had said is a quarterly business review, because we have two things that we do is provide value. Sure, everybody tries to provide value, but we're big on proving it. And so some of those quarterly business reviews are to go over to say, here's what we said we were going to do, and here's the results. That maybe they were all great, maybe some were bad. So you get a quarterly business review to say, how is it going? But you don't talk to the customer success managers every quarter. You can say, look, I have a meeting with my board of directors, and I need to report up, how many breaches did we not get because we had this service, or how many times did we get a certain attack? And so you can go to your customer success manager. You could say, I need a pretty little report. You run it. I don't want to go into the tool and do it myself, which you can do if you wanted. But that customer success person will run you those reports, get you the data, work with you as a team member in that scenario, as we were talking about. So that's the idea. You pick up the phone, a human will answer. You get this customer success person that's with you along the entire journey. So that's been very helpful. So you're finding
that organizations are leveraging that those become part of their, their KPIs or, key performance indicators, that it's that having that situational awareness so they're not flying blind.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the key differentiating makers, because some of the other services, you just get into a queue, you're, waiting for someone to respond from the support desk. And so that's kind of suboptimal service, in my opinion. So,
and you touched on it a little bit ago, Jerry, is that there's the critical, the high, the medium, the low. Is that if you don't have that awareness, that situational awareness, you're ignoring maybe those mediums and lows, but yet there could be real problems lurking down in some of those lower critical areas.
Yeah, I think in recent days, Target compromise started at a medium. And part of the problem was they weren't monitoring medium, of course. Another thing, Greg, it's a bad way to do it, but some of the customers are tuning down the tools. And so they're not just looking at critical high and medium, they're saying tune the tools down to not send us so many alerts. And so they're accepting a little bit of risk that they could miss something in doing that. But again, what do you do if you don't have manpower to look at them all? You have to have a strategy to reduce the risk. And so that's why customers are doing that. I understand. But it's not the best way to do it, I believe.
Yeah, perfect sense. So as we build out here and continue on this journey, walk us through this. What is this showing us?
This is showing you that you need to have 3 PhDs at Microsoft to understand the licensing, for sure. No, look, I said I worked at Microsoft a long time, and this was a struggle. I mean, it's complex and licensing. No one would give A+ to Microsoft for licensing. But the reason I show you this is because you asked how to get the most out of your security with an MDR. First of all, us as your MDR, we need good detection tools in place. We are monitoring the tools you have. Like, we don't have tools to install for you. We monitor what you have. So for us, we can do the best job for you if you have the best tools deployed and tuned correctly. And so, Greg, you had hit on that before we go down this slide anymore, is that as our service, we will help. Let's say you wanted to go all in Microsoft. You've already bought it. You just haven't deployed the pieces. We will help as getting them deployed, but more importantly, we will tune them for the best signal. That again is on our part that says if we don't do that, it's hard for us to get good results if we don't have good signal. So part of ours is to tune those. A lot of them, especially in Office. Office needs constant tuning. There's lots of policy changes, lots of detection models coming out, and so that set and forget it. We will review and make sure you have the best signal coming in. So that's also a key point. But here's interesting is some things I'm going to suggest to you is like what's the next steps. But one of them is that I'd figure out, okay, what do we own? And I see it over and over again is that even in the E3 stack, there's a lot of security controls that are being duplicated because a customer will buy an endpoint tool to monitor identity. Let's say, I'm just making that up, but there are a lot of tools that are duplicate. And so I'm saying, I would rationalize and say, are we duplicating tools that we've already purchased through this Microsoft stack that's integrated? And then I would ask, is the tool Microsoft has, is it effective? And is it effective the same? That might be a kind of a gray area, because sometimes if you say, okay, this one's 100%, this one's 70, if I can get all mine at 90, but they talk to each other, ultimately you're in better shape because they basically are integrated. And so this, excuse me, this slide is showing E3 at the top of some of the tools you already own. The bottom is the E5 step up for Microsoft. And E5 means everything in that bottom box. But if you said, I'm not interested in Teams or phone or any of these other things, the red box represents the security suite. And so if you bought the E5 security suite bundle, then you would get all these tools: Microsoft Defender for Office, Microsoft Defender for Identity, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and Cloud Apps. And so basically this would be the infrastructure platform that is ideal for us to monitor. Now, having said that, we know that's not reality for a lot of people. They say, hey, we have 17 divisions and 16 of them can't agree on security tools. And so that's the way the world is for them. And we are happily continue monitoring all the disparate systems. It's just not as great as if you had a common platform to use.
Okay. So, you touched there, Jerry, about tuning for best signal, which was right on the heels of that example of what some will do, which is, turn things down, turn the sensitivity down so we're not getting all the noise. And if we miss something. So part of that is tuning for that best signal. And again, going back to this concept of, incidents, alerts they're just going up logarithmically. And that to hit that other curve of that you're able to get your mean time to resolve is being reduced. If you're from the financial side house, you could put a metric on that and say, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, we are standing into the face of everything coming at us, and we're able to handle more of them by not ignoring it. Where I want to go with this, Jerry, is that you talked about, adjusting the stack, so to speak, that you're looking at things at different altitudes and layers. But context, you mentioned that context. It's tuning for the context of the business. Could you touch on that?
Yeah, that is super key and critical, and like I said, I love Microsoft like my family, but out of the box detections as the best they could be, they lack context in a lot of cases. They just don't know the business. They don't know the rhythm of it. They don't know what they should or shouldn't do in these contexts. And so, they correlate, they trim, but it's still up to you to apply that context of your business on top of those alerts and logic. And so that's what we do, which is key. And again, that's the devil in the details, that last stretch there. What the slide you're showing now is, I have used this so many times, and it just shocks me sometimes. And I can't see you raising your hands here, but you can raise them virtually. But I always ask when I get into a meeting, I said, do you have a cybersecurity reference architecture? This says Microsoft on the top. I don't care if you use Microsoft's model or the Peacock model or any other model. You could use any other model. I'm just asking if you have one. Have you ever sat down and said, look, this is our architecture reference, and how do we basically plot what we have on there today? I spent a week one time with a CISO and his team after I showed this. He said, we don't have one. And I'm talking about a Fortune high company, and shocks me. And I'm just saying, wow, I mean, how do you guys actually know what you have, or if it's effective even? And so we spent a week plotting all of their tools on this chart here, which weren't even all Microsoft. Then for the first time, they had a good picture of where they were at. You cannot go anywhere unless you know where you're starting from. And so this would be key important. If you don't have this kind of a thing, again, doesn't have to be a Microsoft one. I'm just saying this should be something that should be your first job that you get after this call, to go make a reference architecture, because then you know where you are. So this architecture here shows all the pieces, but I highlighted the top left as the Security Operations Center. Because at the end of the day, all these signals coming from all of these underlying things need to be good into that top left box so you can detect it. Prevention is great, but detection is key. I think that's a common thing that is said in the industry, and I believe that. And so, if you can't detect it, who cares if you can prevent something? So this should be my. Oh, go ahead.
So part of this, Jerry, then is, to build your model out, part of that assessment, that inventory of what do you have, is it being used? Is it configured properly? Are you getting the right alerts? Is it detecting? Or is it just sitting there on the shelf waiting for somebody to do something with that? Those are all part of building out that situational awareness of what you have.
Yeah, a company I worked with is 200,000 employees, and we basically mapped it out to the NIST standard, but we put little dots like this in each of the columns. And the dot, if it was completely full, at least we thought the control was working properly and doing its job. If it was half of a little bubble, we were saying that it's doing an okay job, but it's legacy. Like we knew that it wasn't doing the best job anymore. And if it was a bubble not full, it knew that was a gap in visibility. We didn't really have anything in that area. But what's surprising to me, that was a year's worth of work, is you think a 200,000 person company was so sophisticated they could have that already. They didn't. So the point is that even if your company, you say, we're great. I mean, sometimes this work needs to be done. And I'm just very passionate about making sure you have this architecture so you can know where you're at. A lot of companies don't.
So, you mentioned a 2,000 person company, a 200,000 person company. This approach, this methodology, what Critical Start is doing and can do, how does it scale up? Does it scale up beyond 200,000? But also, how does it scale down? Where is the lower limit or the lower floor?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are not a SOC replacement. Like, we're probably not your best option if you say, I have nobody. And this is sort of typical in education. It's really bad in education because the math teacher is now the SOC analyst, now the IT manager. And so usually that's not the greatest for us, because in the end of the day, we still have to ask questions to someone internally. Like, we see a compromise or we see something happening, what would you like us to do if it wasn't designed in the rules of engagement? And they never are. It's never complete. Even when we try our best in the beginning, situations happen. So we'll use a two-person as an example. We use a two-person SOC and we do all the heavy lifting. You know, what they get to do in a two-person SOC is they get to review everything we did. And in some cases, we're very customizable. We could do everything in a two-person SOC, everything. Investigate, we can remediate, we can tune, we could do everything. We can do hunting. We do have an incident response team in case something bad did happen. So we could do everything, or a two-person SOC. I've had this situation. They say, we have 2 people today, but we're going to hire 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so as they scale up their SOC capabilities, we can scale down our SOC capabilities. So that's really appealing to some customers. They say, I don't want to pay you all that money for the rest of my life. And so if their model is they'd like to build up and we can build down, we're totally okay with that model. We do that. In a well-formed SOC of 30 people, let's say, they have a lot of people that are doing tier 1 and tier 2 triage. As an example model, we could do tier 1 and tier 2 triage. All that busy work of those millions and millions of alerts, we can triage them to only the things that matter. And then when they get to them, they're sort of a tier 3. And so then what do you do with those 30 people that you have? Well, I say you can point them on more interesting tasks like hunting. Maybe you're doing some proactive stuff, because a lot of the times, even in a well-formed SOC, I ask, are you doing any hunting? We don't have time for that. And so maybe they can do hunting, or better yet, maybe they can go out and bring value to the business. That's on every agenda of the CISO. Security will bring value to the business, but we never have time to bring value to the business because we're always fighting fires. And so even in a well-formed SOC, you have that situation. And, you know, nobody knows it all. And without disclosing any names or companies, we found something recently that was a pretty bad something that we told one of our partner companies about it that they didn't see. So there are some things sometimes that even as a 30-person SOC, you don't see it all, but we see it with our context, because we also get to learn from our other customers. They don't share their data. It's not personal, but we get to learn that these common attacks happen across companies. And so maybe one customer of ours saw it and another one didn't. It automatically gets applied to their detection technology.
So, Jerry, you mentioned the two-person SOC, which there's an interesting angle there. Is a two-person SOC, how do they provide 24/7 coverage?
It's impossible. So
by supplementing it, that's part of that value add there, is that they're effectively getting a multi-person SOC, even though they have their own two-person, that you're supplementing it.
Absolutely. So we want to make them more efficient and more effective. So efficiency comes in that they could get to all the alerts, and effective is they find the breaches before they happen. And that number 12 was a minimum. So if you just did, you know, people have to sleep and eat and people have to take vacations, and you just did the math out, a 12 is a minimum number for a 24/7 SOC, and that's a basic SOC.
Yeah, and that actually gets into some really interesting, you start doing some pro forma analysis on that based on head count and staffing, whatever. And boy, somebody who at one point, as you say, this stuff is so expensive, then when they start looking at that, they're going to like, how do we do more of this? Becomes that value add that you mentioned earlier on, Jerry.
You know, another thing is
to show the value.
Right. And prove it is what we always say. Yes, we want to provide and prove value. I mean, we're big on the proving it, because a lot of times CFOs will come to CISOs and say, I gave you $10 million. What'd you do with it?
Right,
like, we didn't get breached. We're fine. It's not a good answer, you know? And so we have many ways that we show that and prove that. We're very transparent about that for sure. But also one thing last we're going to mention, that two-person SOC, we're using that as our example. Even if you have 4, it doesn't matter, but 2, how well trained are those 2 people? See, that's another aspect that we forget, is that, okay, they're just busy fighting fires. How of the continual training, because techniques change all the time and you need to keep sharp on the skills. So that training, you also have to factor into that two-person SOC to be able to do that if you don't partner with an MDR like ourselves. Our people get trained vigorously for all new techniques. And so that's the only job we have.
And Jerry, we talked about, part of this is all how do you derive that value, maximize your investment in your Microsoft MDR. Part of that context we've talked about, it's the learning the tools, what tools are there, but also what's the context of the business? What's the value to the business? So
Right.
that as you show that value, it's just not that here's the value of what we are responding to, but that you can make that linkage back to the business.
Right. If I was at General Motors, I said, "Hey, Chevy business unit of Chevy, this quarter, we basically stopped 3 breaches for sure. We saw 700 critical alerts that we managed. I mean, there's real data. There's real data behind the value that they get out of it. We did that all in the meantime of an hour or less. We map all of our techniques to the MITRE framework now, and we show you, we say, out of the box, what detections were hit on this particular thing in your tenant, and what did we augment? So we visually show you what we're doing for you. So I think that's super important because, again, security not proven, it's still good, but it's not the greatest. So that's why we're big on proving that.
Outstanding. So what's next, Jerry? What do our attendees, what do they do now? Well, we've talked about a lot of different things. We've walked through how to get some more value, how to maximize that investment. What's next?
Back to the cyber architecture. If you're interested in the Microsoft one, you could just Bing it or Google if you want. But look for Microsoft reference security architecture. It comes up. There are 28 slides. That was the slide I showed you, was the one done. It was the end result, but it'll walk through each of those sections and talk to you about it. And again, you don't have to use that one. You can use any one you want, but just get an architecture if you don't have one. The second is consolidate your tools. I mean, you have controls that are being duplicated. I'm almost sure of that. And so I would be very rigorous about, after you have it on the architecture, consolidate those tools. And if you are all in with Microsoft, get them off the shelf. I mean, if you have an email technology that's not Microsoft Defender for Office, why not? Is it not effective? Is it not doing a great job? I mean, because the integration of that pays for itself alone. And then the last is, no matter if you're 2-person or 30, partner with an MDR. I mean, we think we do a good job. We have a great retention rate. Our customers do love us. We're doing a great job. But I mean, even if it's not us, I mean, an MDR you're going to need to basically do all of the alerts. And I think Gartner just came out with a study. It said 50% of all companies will have an MDR by 2025. 50%. So we only got a couple years, and half of you on this phone are going to have MDR. I'm just asking, are you looking into that now? So those are my 3 go-dos for you, or at least suggestions for you of what I would do next.
Great. Fantastic. Outstanding conversation discussion, Jerry. So we're about to go into our Q&A, but before we go into the Q&A, are there other things that you want to mention, other resources that people should know about, where they can learn more, or you just want to go right into the Q&A?
Yeah, I mean, there's links in here. I think Victoria said there's links to our data sheets. You could go look at those for sure. But we're going to give you our contact information for both myself and a person named Leonard, which is not on the call here, but he's also my partner in crime at Critical Start. Yeah, here's Leonard Volling. Here's our numbers. Here's our email addresses, but give us a call, and we'd love to just have a conversation with you. I mean, we're not trying to bait you. We just want to have a real conversation about what you struggle with and how we might be able to help. That's one thing. Just comes up on my mind right now. We will be at RSA. If you're at RSA this year, we will have a booth. It's 555 is our booth at RSA, 555 number. Come on by, get a demo, have a coffee, shake our hands. That'd be awesome to meet any of you for sure.
Outstanding. And here's just some of those resources that as we go into our Q&A, and a reminder to everybody that this is being recorded, and submit those questions that you have for Jerry, and we'll let him have a little coffee there. Here are those resources, criticalstart.com, and check out a demo, learn about MDR 101. And with that in mind, oh, and by the way, you also have access to these resources via your console. But with that, let's go do some Q&A for a bit, because we've got some queued up here. So why don't we go into that, Jerry, if you're ready?
I'm ready.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Jerry and Greg. Wonderful presentation, wonderful discussion. It does look like we have quite a few questions in from our audience. So the first question that I have here is, most MDRs have SLAs, but do you all consider an email SLA fulfillment, or are we talking actual resolution?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think, some of the less sophisticated MDRs will play that little game, just to be honest, is that they will fulfill what they call an SLA by sending an email. We do not do that. Our SLA is an hour, and it's by resolution. Also, you have to be very careful about something called SLO, which means service level objective, which will also be, we will tell you about it, but not respond to it. We still meet that. So I'm just saying that if you're going to get an MDR provider, make sure you know exactly what they mean by SLA, because it is not all the same.
And Jerry, there's a good one in there, which is, the classic SLA agreement, the SLO, the objective. But sometimes it's that SLE, that service level expectation of what they're
Right.
expecting versus what they've agreed to. It's like, I want this, but I need this. Oh, you want me to pay for that? Well, then I only need this.
Exactly. That's a great point. That's fun.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that answer. And I just want to quickly remind the audience, if you do have any questions, please feel free to type those into the Q&A box now, and we'll make sure to get those answered for you. So the next question I have in here is, does Critical Start just handle alerts, or will they help me configure my Microsoft 365D tools?
Yeah, great. We will help you configure your Microsoft 365 Defender tools. And again, in our conversation, we talked about tuning of them. One part of that is, as an example, we support Sentinel, Microsoft Sentinel. And ingesting into Microsoft Sentinel is interesting because it's not all the same. Like if you use Splunk today and you ingest everything, that's fine. But sometimes you don't need to ingest everything, at least from a security standpoint. So what we help to do is to optimize the ingestion for what really is relevant from a security point of view. And that really is hard dollars. I mean, we're talking about, okay, you have 100 gigs to ingest. That costs a certain amount paying to Microsoft. But if we get you down to 50 gigs, it's real savings. Because a lot of times that 50 gigs is more than enough to do our job well, as an example. The tuning of the other, like MDE, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, we're tuning it up. We're turning on all of the things that can be turned on. Attack surface reduction rules. We're turning on everything that's built in, tamper resistance. There's a lot of controls inside the endpoint. We're tuning them up. Again, we like more signal because we have the capability to resolve every alert every time. And so that's an example of that. And the MDO, Microsoft Defender for Office, it changes. The techniques change all the time, and so the models change all the time. And if you see the rigor at new models get deployed, they don't get turned on by default. So you have to understand, is this model something we need to turn on or not? So yes, the answer is we help you to get those tools deployed and tuned.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. The next question I have is, the attendee asks, so we basically have a two-person SOC. Does your service act as our SOC, or how do we work together?
Yeah, so we do not act as your SOC from your company's side of you. So you still have a two-person SOC, but we make your two-person SOC look like 12 or 20. Let's just use 20 as a good example. what happens is that you dictate the rules of engagement in your two-person SOC. So your two-person SOC says, okay, I want you to do all the investigations, all the alerts, and I want you to just send me all that information, and we can remediate it as a two-person team. That's doable. I don't think it's manageable, but let's just say you decided to do that. Or you said, look at everything and you remediate anything that's not critical and just send us the 10 things that are really critical. We can do that. So it is such a customizable service based on how much aptitude and time you have. And if you said, we don't want to do any of it, just send us reports, we can do that too.
So Jerry, if I could jump in here for a minute, you've talked about that your go-to-market is with partners, with the channel. And some organizations like to put bodies out there as quote-unquote service so they can do the billable hours. It really sounds like you're doing more of a hybrid game, that you're still bringing that value to the end customer, but also enabling value, business opportunity for that partner, for the channel as well, without simply being a body shop.
Right. I mean, we set out to be something and do it really well, an MDR service. We didn't set out to be a consulting practice, like a lot of others are maybe. But the idea is that we are 100% channel. What does that mean? It means that, we help sell the value, we help tune the things, we help do all the pre-sales engineering you need. And then end of the day, you'll transact that actual purchase through a partner. GuidePoint, Presidio, Ascent, SHI, CDW, Insight. I mean, there are like 80 channel partners that we have, because for us, we just want to provide the best service we can. We are not a body shop. However, on the flip side, these partners also bring value because there are things that maybe you as a customer may want that we don't provide. Help desk, asset management, migrations, deployments, on-site break fix. I mean, a lot of stuff they can bring value to that we don't do that. We do one thing, MDR, and we do it very well. And so the partnership, that has been a good model.
And you're not contributing to another technology tool as a part of those busy slides that we saw. You're not saying we're going to solve this, but here, you got to use our tool. It's leveraging what you already have.
Which is a good point, Greg, and I'll just bring it up. I think we missed it, and I missed to say it, is that if you take Critical Start as your MDR service provider, we are easy to divorce. And I tell people that up front. If we don't do what we said, or if we're crummy at what we say, then you can divorce us easy for the reason you just said, is that you own all the technology. We didn't deploy any agents. We don't have a packaged product to give you. We are a managed service with your tools. And so I think that brings a lot of comfort to customers, because they say, I don't want to get locked in to a long deal, and I don't want to unwind that by taking off agents of every computer. I don't want an agent on the computer. It makes it run slow. And so there's lots of things there. But the key point is that we're easy to divorce. Not that you'd want to. We have a fantastic retention rate, but I'm just saying you could.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. In fact, I just scribbled it down that you are doing MDR as a service and not just as another software platform, but as a service. That's fantastic. Victoria, it looks like you got some more questions there in the queue.
Yeah, we do have a few more in from our attendees. The next question that I have reads, with the time to deal with each alert you mentioned and sheer volume, how are you able to cover all alerts?
We have some IP that we call the Trusted Behavior Registry. And so just think about this way. We go about a little bit different, and we have technology to handle this that we created. We rule out all known good. So let me say that again. We rule out all known good. So if you saw 10 million alerts and you said, are any of these good? Do we know that some of these 10 million are good? We have ability to do that, to say, yes, we can rule out that these are good. And so we shrink the 10 million to something a little bit smaller. In fact, it's 90% reduction just by that. Because in reality, some of the alerts that come in are known good. Maybe not known good in your company, but known good in some company. It could be a hardware driver on a Dell laptop that was sending up an alert. But that's the idea. Think about a haystack. We burn the haystack down to find the 5 needles that we don't know anything about. The second part is we get a reduction in machine learning AI, the stuff that we have, by about another 9% with the context of your company. So what we do is we say, okay, Bob is a PowerShell script guru, and on Monday, he runs 1,000 PowerShell scripts on Monday. It would set off every alarm for every tool on the planet. But we know that Bob does it at 7 a.m. on Monday. It's not a problem. Now, if he did it on Tuesday or it wasn't Bob, it's different. Yeah, we don't see that as the same, but that's just to give you a rough idea of what context means to us. So what that really means is we reduce those right off the beginning. We do have SOC analysts, real people that I said, roughly 86 of them right now, I believe. That's the number. Growing is why I can't tell you what it is. What they're focused on is, okay, these 5 needles that we couldn't understand, they are expert trained and they deeply investigate and they go and find all the information about it, which you have at your fingertips, literally. So you could see what our analysts see. There is no black box. It is totally transparent. In fact, I didn't mention, I think we're one of the only MDRs, we have a mobile app for you, the customer. So you put the mobile app on your phone, and you can do everything our analysts do on the mobile app. You can see everything our analysts see. Because reality is, Greg, is that when is the most inopportune time to get a critical alert? Well, you're sleeping. You're out to dinner with your family. You're on vacation. And what happens if you have to, let's say your rules of engagement said, no, I'm the customer, I'll deal with all criticals. Now you're at dinner, you see on your phone, well, you can isolate a machine from your phone. My point is that we give total transparency. We're not a black box. You see exactly what our analysts see, and we provide you all that information.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Victoria, it looks like we got time for another question before we wrap up.
Yes, absolutely. Looks like we have time for just one more question. The next question reads, we definitely struggle with finding FTEs. How does Critical Start get and keep people in this talent shortage?
Yeah, that's great as well. I would think the number one thing for me is culture. I would say a good culture is, it's important to me, obviously, but it's important to our SOC people as well. So we have a really great culture that is number one for us. The second is that we basically have the technology that allows them to get their job done so they feel successful in their role. I think that's super important for SOC analysts. There's a lot of burnout in SOC analysts. The third is that we constantly train them. They're constantly getting trained to be better and better at their job. So we don't just give them one training and say, there you go. New techniques and new challenges come around all the time, so we train them. So those are the 3 things that we retain. I think we have a 99%. I think one person left because they weren't happy. They just had a different opportunity. But again, culture, they're able to achieve, and the training is the 3 things that help us to retain ours. So if you're trying to poach our SOC people, good luck. They're not leaving. We got them locked up.
Outstanding.
Of course. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jerry, for that lovely answer. It does look like that's all the time we have today. But to the audience, if we didn't get to your question, or if you still have one, please feel free to reach out to Jerry Carlson or Leonard Balling from the Critical Start team. I posted their information in the middle of your screen in case you needed it. It can also be found in the speaker bio section of your audience console to the left and in the slide deck located in the resources to the right. So please feel free to reach out to Jerry or Leonard with any questions that you do have. And thank you again so much, Jerry and Greg, for being with us today. Thank you to the audience for attending today's webcast, sponsored by Critical Start and presented by RedmondMag.com. Just another quick reminder of the resources in the center of your screen now. Please feel free to check out those resources to the right of your console. They're great to get a hold of the products from Critical Start and just more information in general. So we thank you again, audience, and thank you, Jerry and Greg. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.
You too. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Yep. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, everybody.